and pressing the nails onto her fingers. Eventually, she surrendered to the unknown force. The lashes seemed to come alive, creeping over her eyes like twisting vines. Suddenly, she felt as frantically she touched her face and ran to the mirror, half expecting to see the lashes from her nightmare clinging to her eye. Gradually, and her attention to her studies dwindled, replaced by an intense focus on her business. Selling eyelashes, nails, and colored contacts had become her priority. Here, on a throne at the center of a vast, dark chamber, stood Queen Mother, her eyes blazing with an unnatural fire. A man dressed in pure white radiated an overwhelming bright of his hand. The entire kingdom shattered, the walls crumbled, the cages broke open, every captive was instantly freed. Adanna came from a humble background, with her mother working tirelessly to support her and her younger brother back in their village. After their father's passing, her mother had to shoulder the entire burden of the family, doing everything she could to ensure Adanna stayed in school. Adanna deeply felt her mother's sacrifice and was determined not to add to her struggles. She knew she needed to find a way to earn her own money. On campus, Adanna noticed how popular beauty products were among the girls. Eyelashes, colored contacts, and nail extensions were everywhere. Realizing there was no local vendor selling these products, she saw a business opportunity. If she could start a small venture, she might earn enough to support herself and even send some money home. But there was one problem. She needed to find a supplier who sold these products in bulk. Unsure where to begin, she decided to post on her Facebook page, hoping someone might have leads. A few days later, a message popped on from a fellow student she recognized from another department. They exchanged a few messages, and the girl offered to introduce Adanna to her supplier. Relieved and excited, Adanna agreed, eager to take this important step towards independence. The next day, Titi took Adanna to her personal supplier, known as Madam General, a name that held weight in the area. As they arrived at the warehouse, Adanna was struck by its size. It was vast and organized, with workers moving efficiently around stacks of vibrant products that seemed to stretch on forever. Inside the warehouse, buzzed with activities, Adanna's eye widened as she surveyed the array of eyelashes she had never seen before. From voluminous, dramatic styles to subtle, natural looks, there were short ones, long layers, glittering finishes, and matte options, each more enticing than the last. Madam General sat confidently in her stylish chair, a commanding presence aimed the chaos. When Titi entered, Madam General greeted her warmly, but Adanna noticed a strange undertone in their interaction. The two women leaned in to whisper, casting furtive glance towards her as she admired the warehouse, completely unaware of the exchange. After a few moments, Titi and Madam General turned their attention back to Adanna. "Welcome, Adanna," Titi said with a smile. "This is where the magic happens. You can find everything you need here." Madam General's gaze swept over Adanna, assessing her with a look that sent a chill up Adanna's spine. It felt as though she were being evaluated. Shaking off the unease, Adanna focused on the task at hand, ready to dive into the world of beauty products that could change her life. After Adanna selected the products she wanted, Madam General surprised her by saying she could keep her money for now and pay back after selling. "You can pay me back once it's sold." "Wow, thank you, ma," Adanna exclaimed, her heart racing with excitement as she carefully packed the products and headed back to her hostel. Once back, Adanna wasted no time. Using what little money she had left, she created a colorful banner to showcase the nails and eyelashes. She posted photos in various campus groups and shared them on her phone. Her roommate, Bami, even invited her friends over to check the products. Within just a week, Adanna's stock, valued 100,000 naira, was completely sold out. Shocked, she whispered to herself, "So this is how it works. Hey, God is good though." It felt surreal. Just days ago, she had no money and no hope. Yet, here she was, making a profit of 50,000 naira every week. With her newfound success, Adanna returned to Madam General for more products. As the months went by, her business grew. She was now placing orders worth up to 250,000 naira, paying in cash without a second thought. Adanna even started sending money back home to her mother, helping ease some of the burdens her mother had carried alone for so long. Life had taken a beautiful turn, and Adanna couldn't be more happier. One day, Adanna's mother called, her voice filled with a mix of concern and curiosity. "Ada, my daughter, tell me the truth. What kind of business is giving you so much money?" "Mama, it's women beauty products that I'm selling," Adanna replied, her voice bubbling with happiness. "People love them and it's selling really well." "Okay," her mother said slowly. Though Adanna could sense a hint of worry. "Just be prayerful." After chatting for a while, though her words lingered in Adanna's mind. Meanwhile, back at the bustling warehouse, Madam General turned to Titi, her expression serious and intense. "It's time we act fast. This one is strong, and we need to tame her now because many will come through her." "Okay," Titi nodded, her face unreadable. When Adanna returned to the warehouse for her next order, Madam General was there, waiting for her with a smile. "Here, this is for you," she said, handing Ada a beautifully wrapped box. "A small gift from me to you for being such a loyal customer." Adanna accepted the gift, her heart fluttering with excitement. "Thank you, ma," she said, genuinely touched by the gesture. But as she held the box in her hands, a strange feeling washed over her. A quiet, uneasy sensation that she couldn't quite explain. Shaking it off, she thanked Madam General again and left with her new products. But as she walked back to her hostel, her mother's words replayed in her mind. "Just be prayerful." Something about this gift felt different, but she pushed the thought aside, determined to focus on the success she was building. Yet, the feeling lingered, like a shadow she couldn't quite escape from. After a long day of selecting and buying products, Adanna returned to her hostel, surprised to find a line of eager customers already waiting. She smiled, her excitement and pride growing as she attended to each one. Her stock dwindled faster than she could keep up, and by the time she finished, exhaustion weighed heavily on her. Deciding to take a quick nap before diving into her studies, she settled into bed. As she drifted into sleep, Adanna found herself seated before a mirror. In her hands was the gift Madam General had given her. She carefully unboxed it, revealing lashes and nails. But then, an unseen force guided her hands, lifting the lashes and nails towards her face. She tried to resist, but her hands moved as if controlled by someone else, fixing the lashes onto her eyes and pressing the nails onto her fingers. Eventually, she surrendered to the unknown force. The lashes seemed to come alive, creeping over her eyes like twisting vines. Suddenly, she felt a suffocating presence behind her. A deep, unsettling voice whispered in her ear, "You are welcome." Adanna jolted awake, her heart racing and her skin clammy with sweat. She glanced at the desk. There sat the box Madam General had given her, untouched and unopened. Frantically she touched her face and ran to the mirror, half expecting to see the lashes from her nightmare clinging to her eyes, but her face was clear. Her fingers too were bare. Exhausted and shaken, she sat back on her bed, struggling to calm her racing heart. She whispered a quiet prayer, unsure of what was real and what wasn't, but unable to shake the unsettling feeling that had taken root since the gift had entered her room. Days after Adanna's first unsettling dreams, her life started to shift in subtle ways she barely noticed. Her prayer life faded gradually, and her attention to her studies dwindled, replaced by an intense focus on her business. Selling eyelashes, nails, and colored contacts had become her priority. The success was intoxicating, and she loved the thrill of earning money and being able to support her mother. Yet, something felt different, almost like she was being pulled by an invisible force. Then one night, another dream came. In the dream, Adanna found herself in a place she could only describe as paradise. The air was sweet, and everything around her shimmered with elegance and beauty. She saw familiar faces: Bami, her roommate, Titi, and many other of her customers, all radiant, dressed in flawless makeup, long, elegant nails, and lashes that amplified their beauty. Titi noticed her and walked over, her smile dazzling. She took Adanna's hands, leading her towards an enormous dining room that stretched as far as she could see, covered in exotic fruits, drinks, and lavish dishes. At the head of the table sat Madam General, watching her with a welcoming, almost knowing smile. "Come, Adanna," Titi whispered. "Enjoy yourself." Hesitant but curious, Adanna sat down and tasted the fruits, each bite sweeter and more exquisite than the last. Flavors she had never imagined. She felt light, almost dreamy, as if she was floating. After eating, she was led to a bathing area where gentle attendants bathed her and dressed her in a shimmering, elegant red gown. They fixed her long lashes, painted her nails in deep red, and placed colored contacts in her eyes. When she finally looked in the mirror, her reflection took her breath away. She looked enchanting, almost unrecognizable. "Is this me?" she whispered, mesmerized by her transformed reflection. Her beauty was outwardly, yet there was a hollow feeling beneath it, like a piece of her was slipping away with each layer of adornment. As she continued to stare, a sense of unease grew within her. Just then, the dream shattered, and Adanna jolted awake, her heart racing. The strange beauty from the dream lingered in her mind, refusing to let go. Without thinking, she got up and made her way to Titi's room, driven by an urge she didn't fully understand. When Titi opened the door, she looked at Adanna knowingly, as if she had been expecting her. Without a word, she guided Adanna to a chair, picked up her beauty tools, and began recreating the look from her dream. The same long lashes, the same deep red nails, and the same colored contacts. Each layer felt familiar, yet chilling, as though a part of her was slipping into something she couldn't control. After Titi finished dressing Adanna, a silent understanding passed between them. They didn't exchange a single word, yet it felt as if they had discussed everything detailed beforehand. Without hesitation, Adanna reached over to Titi's desk and picked up a set of keys. The motion felt natural, almost instinctual, as though she was following a plan that had been laid out long ago. With the keys in her hand, Adanna made her way outside, where a sleek black car waited in front of Titi's lodge, the driver's seat, her movements calm and purposeful, every action feeling smooth and oddly familiar. She started the engine, a quiet hum filling the air, and drove off. Her destination was the mall, though she couldn't explain why. It was as if an invisible thread was guiding her there. As she drove, a strange sense of purpose filled her, but in the back of her mind, she felt a faint, lingering unease, a whisper that warned her she was treading into the unknown. Adanna drove to the mall, and as she stepped out of the car, all eyes turned to her, men and women alike. She walked with an effortless grace, her presence commanding attention, and within moments, nearly everyone in the mall had noticed her. She moved through the aisles briefly, her aura captivating those around her, making her impossible to ignore. After a few minutes, she returned to her car and drove back to her hostel. Once there, she lay down on her back, staring at the ceiling, feeling a strange sense of fulfillment. But within seconds, she drifted into a vivid vision, finding herself back in that strange, enchanting place. This time, many girls had gathered around her, applauding her with admiration. Some even looked at her with envy. Among them was Titi, smiling as she clapped. "Follow me," Titi said, her voice filled with pride. "Queen Mother wants to see you." Titi led her into an inner chamber where an incredibly beautiful woman sat, her eyes glowing with an unnatural light. From the waist down, she had the tail of a fish. Her entire being radiated an ethereal beauty. She was dressed in luxurious garments, adorned with jewels, and a majestic crown rested upon her head. Titi bowed and stepped back, leaving Adanna alone with the regal figure. The woman's gaze softened as she looked at Adanna, and she spoke with a voice as smooth as silk. "Welcome, special one. You have done well on your first assignment. You have proven yourself, and I am pleased with you." "Thank you, Queen Mother," Adanna replied, her voice filled with both awe and reverence. The Queen Mother's lips curved into a satisfied smile. "You have done well, my child. You have made me proud, and others will follow in your footsteps. This is only the beginning." Adanna nodded, feeling a strange mix of pride and unease swelling within her. The Queen Mother's gaze softened but held a fierce intensity. "But remember, with power comes loyalty. Soon you will be called upon to take further steps. Do you accept?" A strange compulsion filled Adanna, her heart pounding as she nodded. "Yes, Queen Mother." The Queen Mother reached out, brushed a strand of Adanna's hair back. "Good. When the time comes, you will know what to do." As she spoke, her voice seemed to echo, the chamber and its figures fading slowly until Adanna felt herself being pulled back. Jolting awake in her hostel room, heart racing, she glanced around, disoriented and shaken, the memory of the Queen Mother's touch. Adanna's phone buzzed, and seeing her mother's name on the screen, she reluctantly picked up. "Ada, my daughter," her mother's voice trembled. "I had a terrible dream. You were in a dark place, calling out for help. I reached out my hand to you, and you did too, but somehow you couldn't grasp it, even though we were so close." Adanna's mother paused, her tone growing more urgent. "I know something isn't right. Ada, I have been praying for you, and you should do the same, my child. Please don't forget." "Yes, Mama," Adanna replied, her voice tight with irritation. She ended the call, anger simmering as the word prayer echoed in her mind, stirring a wave of resentment. Later that night, as midnight approached, Adanna arrived at the Queen Mother's chamber for the long-awaited coronation. Queen Mother's gaze glowed with approval as she summoned a misty fog, revealing shadows of people Adanna recognized. Her customers, the girls who bought her products, friends and even distant classmates. "These are the souls you have captured, Adanna," Queen Mother whispered. "Now choose their fate. Inflict accidents, illness, disaster. Their pain will bring their souls here eternally. Do this and you will rise as a full fortified member of the Slay Queen Order." Adanna felt a strange surge of power and control. She raised her hand, about to fulfill the queen's request, when a familiar voice broke through the eerie silence. "Adanna, Adanna, my daughter, please don't do this. Let's go home." In an instant, Adanna's mother's voice filled her mind, warm and pleading. Adanna hesitated, her hand hovering in the air. Her mother's voice grew stronger, reaching out, pulled her back. "Come home, Adanna, I'm here for you." In a flash, she found herself back in her lodge room, her heart pounding and sweat covering her face. She sat up, gasping, the weight of the nightmare still pressing on her. Without a second thought, she packed a bag, grabbed her things, and made her way back to her village. When she finally arrived, she ran to her mother, wrapping her arms around her and sobbing uncontrollably. Her mother held her tightly, murmuring gently words of comfort. Sensing her daughter had been through a battle far deeper than words could explain. When Adanna finally calmed down, she poured out everything to her mother, her voice trembling as she confessed what she had experienced. She told her mother how Madam General's gifts had been the start of her initiation into the mysterious Slay Queen Order, a realm where souls were captured and held. She explained that every girl on campus who bought the lashes, nails, or eye contacts from her was unknowingly initiated into the coven, that souls claimed regardless of their will. Even some of the boys were drawn into this dark world. Each product carried a hidden grip on those who used it, connecting them to Queen Mother's airy kingdom. Adanna's mother listened, horrified, but her firm grip on Adanna's hand never wavered, offering her the comfort and strength she desperately needed. "Thank God, my daughter, that you made it back. But it's not over," her mother said as she moved swiftly to prepare some food, offering comfort in the small acts of care. Adanna, exhausted, ate and soon lay down, drifting into a deep sleep. Meanwhile, her mother entered her prayer room and began to pray fervently, her voice echoing through the quiet house. She prayed without pause, determined to break the hold on her daughter's soul. But as Adanna slept, a new nightmare unfolded. She found herself trapped, surrounded by dark shadows, and pulled toward a fiery throne. Horrific creatures held her, their claws digging into her arms as they dragged her forward, her body quivering in terror. There, on a throne at the center of a vast, dark chamber, stood Queen Mother, her eyes blazing with an unnatural fire, her face twisted in rage. The ground shook as Queen Mother's booming voice filled the space. "How dare you?" she thundered. "I gave you wealth and status among your peers, and this is how you repay me?" Adanna, trembling, tried to free herself, but the creature's grip was unbreakable. In one terrifying moment, Queen Mother pointed her finger at Adanna. "Take her to the lost souls," she ordered, her voice a glow of anger. The creatures dragged Adanna into a different, darker chamber, a vast space filled with cries and desperate pleas. As her eyes adjusted to the dimness, she saw countless people trapped inside a giant iron cage, men, Women, the young and old, all crying and begging, their voices hoarse and broken. These were the same people whose souls had been captured when Adanna unknowingly bewitched them with the items from the kingdom of darkness. Faces she recognized stood out among the crowd, familiar classmates and strangers alike. It seemed like a never-ending sea of souls, their sorrow echoing endlessly. The creatures threw Adanna into a separate cage and she stumbled on her knees, trying to understand the nightmare she was trapped in. In the darkness, she heard a faint, broken whisper. "Who is there?" she asked, her voice trembling. A frail figure emerged, her roommate, Bamidele, beaten and battered, almost beyond recognition. Bruises covered Bami's face, and she was barely able to stand, her body trembling from exhaustion and torment. "Bami!" Adanna's voice cracked as she reached out. But Bami was too weak to respond. She sank to the floor, her face etched with pain and defeat. Adanna's heart sank, realizing the torment that lay in store for her if she didn't escape. Meanwhile, back in the physical world, Adanna's mother had been praying for hours without stopping, her heart filled with unshakable determination and faith. Empowered by the Spirit of God, she continued to pray, her voice resolute as she called for her daughter's deliverance. Then, in a soft, clear whisper, the Spirit of God spoke to her heart, urging her to go to Adanna's room. Obeying immediately, she went to her daughter's room and called her name, but Adanna laid unresponsive on the bed, as though in a deep, unnatural sleep. Without hesitation, her mother knelt beside her, praying with every greater fervor, her voice filling the room with unwavering strength. Minutes passed in that dark place, and Adanna, now desperately holding on to hope, leaned toward Bami and asked quietly, "Why were you tortured, Bami?" Bami, her voice weak and cautious, whispered back, "It was because I said the name above." Confused, Adanna looked up, seeing nothing but darkness. "There's no name above here," she replied. "No, Ada, I mean a father above," Bami murmured, pointing upwards. Adanna's mind raced, and almost without thinking, she said, "Jesus Christ." In a flash, Bami's eyes widened in panic, and she tried to cover Adanna's mouth, but it was too late. The name had been spoken. Instantly, the entire kingdom began to tremble, the ground shaking violently under them. Adanna looked around, stunned as the walls quaked. Out of the shadows emerged Queen Mother. Her face contorted in fury, she strode towards the cage, her piercing gaze locking onto Adanna. Without a word, she seized her, dragged her to a separate room. In this chamber, Queen Mother raised a gleaming sword over Adanna, her voice filled with seething rage. "Who told you to say that name here?" she demanded, her voice laced with venom. "I hate that name. Light and darkness have nothing in common. If you mention that name, you are my enemy." As she lifted the sword, preparing to strike, a blinding light burst into the room. Adanna shielded her eyes as a figure appeared in the doorway, bathed in a light so intense that it illuminated the entire dark kingdom. The figure, a man dressed in pure white, radiated an overwhelming brightness. His face was hidden, obscured by the intensity of the light, yet his presence was undeniable. With a single wave of his hand, the entire kingdom shattered, the walls crumbled, the cages broke open, every captive was instantly freed. Adanna felt herself lifted in an instant, carried by a force greater than anything she had ever known. In a flash, she was back in her room, safe, with a profound sense of peace. The last she saw of the Queen Mother and her followers was the anguished face, left wounded and powerless in the ruins of their own shattered realm. Back in her room, Adanna opened her eyes, her heart pounding, yet filled with awe. She looked up to see her mother beside her, still praying. Tears filled Adanna's eyes as she hugged her mother tightly, finally free from the chains of darkness. After spending a few weeks with her mother, Adanna felt stronger, her spirit renewed. She was ready to face whatever lay ahead. When she returned to the hostel, she was surprised to see Bami waiting for her, transformed. Her usually flashy clothes were gone, replaced by a simple, modest look. There was a calmness in her eyes, a peace Adanna hadn't seen before. "Adanna," Bami said with a warm smile, "I'm so glad you're back." Adanna hugged her, grateful that they had both survived such a dark time. But as she glanced around the school lodge, she noticed something unsettling. Titi was nowhere to be found. "Where is Titi?" Adanna asked, a trace of worry in her voice. Bami's face grew serious. "She hasn't been seen around much," she replied. "She hasn't been around much," she replied. "There are rumors, strange ones. They say she's been seen with Madam General, but only at night. And sometimes people say they hear things coming from her room." A chill ran down Adanna's spine as she realized that Titi was still under Madam General's influence, possibly even more deeply entangled now than before. From that day forward, Adanna was a changed person. She carried her Bible everywhere, holding tightly to the name of Jesus, which had saved her from the darkness. She knew that her experience was more than just a warning. It was a calling. Alongside Bami, she had also turned her life around. Adanna set out to help others, trapped by the same deceptive powers that had nearly destroyed them. They would seek out students who had unknowingly fallen into the snares of the Slave Queen coven, sharing their testimony and spreading the message of hope through prayer, faith, and the power of Jesus Christ. They helped free others, one soul at a time, from the burden of the dark influence that gripped their campus. Both Adanna and Bami became symbols of light in their school. They encouraged others to live a life of faith, to find strength in prayer, and to seek God's guidance. The girls' bravery and unwavering belief in Jesus Christ inspired many to turn away from the temptations that once drew them in. Their story spread beyond the campus, reaching villages and cities. Adanna's life had come full circle. The trials she endured had become a beacon of hope for others. In her faith, she found purpose, and together with Bami, she walked the path of righteousness, shining lights into places others feared to tread, carrying with her the eternal message of love, redemption, and salvation in Christ Jesus. Hey lovelies, what do you think about Adanna's journey? It's amazing how faith can pull us out of the deepest darkness, right? Remember, beauty fades, but a heart rooted in faith and truth is everlasting. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Do you know anyone who faced similar challenges? Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe if you enjoyed this story. And stay tuned for more tales with a twist. See you in the next video. Bye.